All right. Any questions before we get started?
I don't think so. I think I've listened to it a bunch, and I was like, okay, what can I prep in my head? Because this is how my brain works. I'm like, what can I pre-frame? What can I do? And then you just can't.
Yeah.
You really just can't. So we just got to just jump into it, I guess. Right?
It's so funny. It's a podcast on, mental health, and I've had a lot of people in with anxiety. And of course, the first thing they ask is, what can I prep? What are you going to ask?
Yeah,
me?
exactly.
And I'm like, it doesn't work that way.
It's all right. Just a conversation. You can't prep for a conversation.
Yeah. The 5 Elements of Letting Go, the podcast. Discussing mental health openly and freely, and learning tools and techniques to find peace. So welcome everyone to the 5 Elements of Letting Go. I'm Dr. Jared McCollum, and I have with me Dr. Daxon Jones.
Hello, hello.
All right. I've known Daxon for almost a year now. He is a graduate of Chiropractic College in the New Zealand College of Chiropractic.
Yes.
Okay. He's a student at UC as well. Grew up here in Okotoks. And his goal is to help our community feel healthier and happier. And
that's exactly it.
He is a very fun, fascinating young man. So I thought I'd have him here on the podcast and share his wisdom and experiences with us. I've already got him read because I already mentioned to him his the Christian rock boy band he was in.
Oh yeah, there it is.
FX of Grace.
Yeah, blushing. Still red. I'm gonna have to take off my sweater soon.
Do you use that to sweep them off their feet?
I don't. It's something that often gets found out.
Yeah,
a couple of weeks in, or a month or two in, and like, oh, this is interesting. But no, it's not. That's not what I lead with. That's for sure.
Yeah. I remember when I was a young kid. I think we were in like grade 5 or 6. We wanted to start a band, and half of us got instruments, the other half didn't. Mm-hmm. We came up with a name, and it never went anywhere.
What was the name?
Because we had no talent.
Well, that is a prerequisite, but at least you had fun.
We did. I think we called it instead of Bullseye, the Eye of Bull or something.
Oh, that's
stupid
wonderful.
like that.
That's just fantastic.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. We never ever did. None of us ever took band or ever had any experience even after that when we thought we wanted to be musicians. I think it was just that, to impress others.
Yeah, no, I love it. I was super lucky. All the people that I was with, they were just the best musicians. So at least we had some musicality going on. The content was hilarious. But yeah, it was a good time. I look back on those memories pretty fondly. I actually recently met up with Andrew, one of the lead singers, in the band, and we just chatted and just reminisced a little bit, and it was
that's cool.
It was fun. It was fun to reconnect.
Gee, that's my 4th musician so far we had in here. There's a lot of musical talent in Okotoks, isn't it?
Honestly, there is.
Pretty crazy. Yeah, we had Tim Korteist we had on here, and then we had Madison Krebs and Tanya Ryan. So we've got all these, and now Daxon Jones.
I mean, I wouldn't consider myself musician, but hey, here I am.
At least you're in a band.
Just don't look it up on Spotify, please. Everybody listening, please don't.
Oh, are you serious? It's on Spotify?
Oh, and Apple Music, and everywhere music is found. Really,
who put it? Like, that's new stuff. That's 2012. Was it up back in 2012, or was it?
Yeah, it was up during all of that.
Wow.
That was something that we really wanted to do, was like, let's be on iTunes, right? Like, that was the thing.
Okay, I'm going to definitely put a link in
here we go.
In the description after this.
Some things have changed since then, but I love it. It's fantastic.
Oh, that's cool. Well, it's always good that's a very positive thing when you can look back on those things and feel good about it and, proud of it rather than feeling a little. Because there's definitely things I was doing at that age as a kid that I'm glad there's no record of it.
Yeah, I kind of grew up, I guess, in, like, I was, 13 when I got Facebook. So, like, that was, like, right when Facebook was becoming a thing.
Yeah.
So I kind of was, like, this cusp of growing up with it. But, I mean, back then is when you used to post, like, your name would always be the first thing that posted. And then you would say, is.
Yes.
So it'd be, like, Daxon Jones. And then it would say, is. It'd be, like, sad today. Like that, those were posts. So things have changed a little bit since then.
Yeah, it's funny. And then when you go back through the memories and it shows these posts, because it doesn't show the Jared McCollum is anymore. And then you got these really weird posts. I'm like, what does that post mean?
Yep.
Because when you forget that beginning part, because I've changed it quite a bit since then.
Absolutely have.
Yeah, and of course now young kids aren't even getting on Facebook.
No,
that's not cool anymore.
It's not. Yeah. You got to get on Instagram, TikTok. Yeah. I don't. What else to our kids on? Snapchat? Is that
Snapchat? Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Now, are you on Snapchat or TikTok?
I am not on TikTok. I grew up with Snapchat through like middle school, high school. But no, I have not downloaded TikTok. My mentality is if there's anything that's really, really good on TikTok, then somebody's going to post it on Instagram and I'm going to see it.
Yeah, exactly. There you
so
go.
I don't need to waste any more time on any devices if I don't have to. That's kind of my mentality.
Love it. So, the main purpose of this podcast is to discuss mental health and talk about how it's affecting our community, where we see things are going. How would you describe the current state of mental health?
So, this is something I knew you were going to ask.
Yes.
You ask everybody this. And did I try to prep something? Yes. Did I prep something? Absolutely not. So, the way I view mental health and the current state of it is the mindset around what mental health is starting to shift. I think it's no longer this thing that you either have or don't have. And it's becoming something that people are understanding that you have to work on. And it's like your fitness or like your relationships that you have to put effort in to get the benefits out of it. And I think the state of mental health is good in a sense that we're talking about it. We are more visible about it. We are having conversations, and I think that's fantastic. And there's a lot of cool things that are happening. I think, obviously, with the amount of high stress that is going on in the world right now, that mental health as a whole has probably been lower, like as a, like mental health, actual like emotional well-being is lower than it has been in a long time. But the conversations are happening, the awareness is happening, and there's a lot of work to do. But I think it's uplifting that we're at least having these conversations and we're sitting here across the table having a conversation about it. I feel like that wouldn't happen the same way.
Yeah, I like how you put it, where now it's viewed as everyone has mental health. Yeah, whether it's good or bad, everyone has to work at it and take steps to keep it balanced and work towards a more balanced state.
Exactly.
Because I don't think that's how people looked at it before. Like you said, prior, especially when I was younger, it was, either you had mental health problems, or you didn't. And it was only because again, the viewpoint, 20, 30 years ago was that, very few people had any issue with mental health. And if they did, if you go back even further, if you had any concern with mental health, they would just put you in a home. Oh, yeah. And now, of course, then it got to the point where it was just something you were shunned and mocked and made fun of. And now we're finally in a position where it's something that I do believe there's this universal acceptance now that at one level or another, everyone is working at finding that balance with their mental health.
No, I completely agree. It's like you said, at one level and other people are at least aware of it. They might not be doing anything to do it themselves, but at least people know that it exists and that everybody has it and that is something that we can work on. And everybody's practice around uplifting and balancing their mental health is different. And some people are working on it more than others. And I think it's cool that you're doing this and that we are able to have conversations around different ways we can work on it and ways that work better for other people. And that's what's been so fascinating about listening to your podcast has been listening to what other people do. Because I know what I do, and I know what the people around me do, and I know what I recommend to patients, but it's cool to hear other people's stories.
Yeah, it's interesting because even like I had one recently with Brent Culver, and it'll come out on the 22nd of September. And in that discussion, he really doesn't, his discussion of it was not as open or, just doesn't seem to be something that he struggles with, right? he recognizes it, he sees it, and in others, and his to his certain level. But to him, he's never gotten to that point where it's been a struggle. Mm-hmm. And I still think it's interesting discussing it with people like that because eventually everyone does. Mm-hmm. It's like when I have patients in. I remember one time last year in particular, I had in a patient in her 70s with really bad anxiety and a 10-year-old. And the exact, they were coming in almost in the same days. And I was working with them both almost at the same time. And it kind of blew me away just that the blocks, oftentimes older people have with, getting the tools and overcoming it. Mm-hmm. There's this like disconnect from that faith in themselves or this understanding, just because for so long it was something that, you never had or you never talked about. So in her mind, she's never had anxiety until now, and now it's this whole new thing. And what's wrong with me? I was never broken before. And I'm like, you've always dealt with this.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And the mentality that, it's this thing that switches on, or it's this thing that is broken about you, or that you have to have full-blown anxiety attacks to have anxiety. And I've heard you talk about that a little bit before, but people are learning that that's not what the case is. And mental health is not just, I'm really depressed, or I'm super anxious, or I have some sort of challenge. Mental health is every day. Mm-hmm. And it's you see different pieces of anxiety, or different pieces of mental health struggles, or things that you have to talk yourself through every single day. And it's not what people used to associate it with back in the day, which was just this, like you need to get on pills and go to a hospital kind of situation. But in your experience with working with that person who was older and the person who was younger, were they able to cope with that differently, or balance things out more effectively in different age groups? Like, what did you find?
Well, I always find in general kids heal faster than adults because they're not screwed up yet. Mm-hmm. And, and really, like, the more suffering and trauma we endure, the more difficult it is for us to let go and find that balance. Where young people haven't experienced as much, suffering and trauma. And, some have at very young ages, but still there's this resilience and acceptance that because they change so much, they're constantly in the state of flux and change. And they see that and recognize that.
They're adaptable.
So they know they can learn and change and move on. Whereas as we age, we get stuck in this thing where like, well, I've always been like this. This is who I am. When they don't realize that we're constantly changing. It doesn't matter how old we are. Mm-hmm. And if we can open up to that concept, and if I could, help, anyone understand something, it's that we are in a constant state of change. And anything we are dealing with, there is always a way to change and improve because, our body, every cell in our body is completely new every like 7 or 9 months. Mm-hmm. Some organs and cells change even faster.
Like our skin is just constantly.
And so if we can understand that we're always in this state of change, then we can accept that and work with it. Mm-hmm. And then our mind can change. Our body can change. Our beliefs can change. All of those things. We can continue progress and evolve over time.
No, absolutely. And that's something I talk to my patients quite a lot about is we want our bodies to be dynamic, to be changing, to be adapting, because that's what they're designed to do. They're designed to take all this craziness that we're throwing at it all day, every day, and take that and use it constructively, hopefully, to make positive change so that we can be better. And it's something that I see with my patients all the time. If they're not changing, then that's a state of lack of health or dis-ease, right? Where they're not adapting the way they're supposed to. So if we're having to adjust the same thing every time and we're not changing, then we say, okay, what's causing you to not be adaptable? What is your body doing that's not in the state of adaptability? And being able to show them that their bodies are meant to do this and you want to be changing. And sometimes change isn't just an uphill climb too. Like the healing journey was not an uphill climb. And you have that state of flux where your things go up and down. And it's just fantastic to see. That's something I talk a little bit about as well is the 3 ways that our body does adapt to stress. And it can either take that stress in, like I said, and use it constructively. That's what we want our bodies to do. That's when they're doing the things that they're designed to do. Or a body can take things in, take stress in, and just mitigate the change. And then you don't even notice it. That's kind of like we're fighting against gravity every day. We don't think of that. Or we're, UV rays are constantly going at us, and our body just handles that on its own. And then the last thing, the way our body can adapt is to do damage control. And this is often what we see in a lot of people, is that they build these dysfunctional habits in their body and in their mental health as well. And they wait until that damage control builds up and up and up, and we build this negative habit to the point where, okay, now we're having a full-blown issue. And now we have to work on unwinding all of that and breaking all that down before we can kind of balance ourselves out. And I think that really just relates to what you're saying with the younger person who their body is primed to adapt. They haven't built those bad habits yet, but that older person, they've built that dysfunction of those negative habits into their nervous system their entire lives. Now you're teaching them, hey, there's actually something you can do about this. Yeah. And they're having to do that for the first time, and their bodies are creatures of habits, and they're having to learn how to actually do that for the first time, and they're not as malleable to change. So it's just fascinating to me to see.
Yeah. It's so interesting, particularly when you're discussing stress, stress only, and studies have shown us now that stress only affects us negatively if we perceive it as a negative thing.
Perception, I love that word.
And so if we can, change that, and this is where, Taoism comes into play, because, Taoism is directly translated as the way or the path, right? And there's this concept of wu wei, or emptiness, where we accept that path, and we don't, once we're on that path and we're following it, we don't fight it. We accept what comes, And I've said this before on the podcast, like, the tattoos on my hands, Amor Fati, is love your fate and accept that path, what it gives you, and rather than judging every situation as good or bad, and we embrace it as this is just part of my path, and that what am I going to learn from this? Where is it going to take me? We can then turn that, stress that we call it into something
constructive.
Yeah, that helps us to grow and improve and adapt and change and become something else. But we have this like stuckness in our heads where, no, I'm comfortable. I don't ever want anything to change. And if something changes and we become uncomfortable, we always see it as a negative thing rather than just embracing it as just part of life and part of our path.
No, I 100% agree. Change is what life is. Life is adaptation and movement. And it's just fascinating to think of the world that way, that everything that happens to you is not this good or bad thing or based off of a good or bad decision. Everything that happens is a learning lesson and a life lesson to, okay, this is how I responded to this, or this is what the outcome was for this. How can I do this more effectively moving forward? And that's kind of what the beauty of the journey of life is, really. To me, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Within Chinese medicine, when you're studying it, not so much anymore, but traditionally there was 8 limbs or eight therapies that we would use. And they're from like the least most invasive to the most invasive. And then they're from the most effective to the least effective in a way. And they're ones, and they kind of go on this spectrum from ones that your practitioner has to do to ones they teach you to ones you have to do on your own. And so they move from, like acupuncture and herbs are at the bottom. They're like last resort stuff, and I'm sure as a chiropractor, you feel the same way, adjustments, really, you want people to be able to heal themselves, right?
That's what the body's designed to do.
Yeah. And then you move up into, so we have acupuncture and herbs, and then we get into, in Chinese medicine, there's like feng shui and astrology and diet and exercise. And the top is the mind. And how it's so through beautiful. Meditation, relaxation. That is the ultimate tool for healing in Chinese medicine. And it's the one that, we can teach and guide a patient with, but it's something they have to work with on their own. And, when I discovered that, like way back in my first year, that's where I was just, and I had known this even before, working as a personal trainer and all of that, seeing that people get in their way, not in their body, but in their heads most of the time. And when they can't use their mind to get themselves out, that's when they really get stuck and get imbalanced.
No, absolutely. That's such a beautiful way of looking at it. That the mind is really the pinnacle. That's how we perceive the world. And you talked about perception a little bit earlier. And in my line of work, a lot of what I use the word perception with is pain. And you probably do too, is pain is really a perception, how we attach emotional response to a neurological input. Mm-hmm. And that same neurological input for one person can be completely different in the pain level or the what you feel compared to the other person. And if we can have our mindset around things effectively, outside of pain, and just in the world in general, you can perceive things in a certain way based on how you are looking at it, what your viewpoint is and perspective on that situation. And it's absolutely true, like you were saying, the adjustment is the last resort. It is what I do every day because the body they haven't used those multi-steps. The body hasn't adapted appropriately and has kind of gotten itself stuck. Yeah. It just needs a little help along the way. And that's where I come in. That's where you come in. We rewire how the body's communicating with itself. And through the nervous system and through, all your acupuncture points and the energy flow system, like allowing the body to communicate more effectively because it's built up dysfunction through not correcting things in that hierarchy beforehand. Mm-hmm. And if we can work on correcting our mindset and then giving our body the nutrition, the exercise, the water, everything it needs to have a good function, then we shouldn't need us. But unfortunately, we do. Yeah.
Well, I always say to patients, it's, like when I explain the 8 limbs in a class, then patients will be like, well, why do you use acupuncture then? And I'm like, well, it's because by the time you come and see me,
yeah, exactly.
It's so far gone that we need that help and assistance to catch you, to that state.
Which is why it's so beautiful that kids are now starting to work on the mind and they're teaching mindfulness in schools. Yeah. And they're doing yoga and they're talking about their emotions at a young age and learning that you can have a conversation with your dad or your mom or your grandparents about how you're feeling. You don't have to hide that inside. Mm-hmm. Not speaking from experience at all, but that you can have these conversations. So we're teaching kids how to work on the mind from a young age so that they're not growing into adults with all these problems, that they're actually able to functionally deal with these things. Yeah. When they're growing up. It's fantastic.
Well, speaking of that, how far back can you go to where you remember, your first time where you struggled with your mental health?
That's a great question. My story has been fun. It's been interesting. I remember, I think I was like 6. I remember feeling like I didn't belong around all the other kids. Mm-hmm. And this is very classical behavior of young LGBTQ individuals, is when we would have family friends over, I would want to hang out with the parents and not the kids. Mm-hmm. I would want to sit around and just listen to the parents talk because I didn't feel like I fit in with other kids. So just because the way that they thought, the way that they played, the way that they interacted with the world was this binary of, we're taught from a young age that men and women are supposed to be together, and you're playing dress up and house and man and woman and baby. And so I always felt like I didn't fit in because it just didn't make sense to me because I didn't like women. And I didn't realize that, of course, until later on and fully accept that. But I think it was about 6th early. I mean, my memory as a child is a whole nother conversation, but my memory is awful of my childhood. And I think it comes down to trauma and to building those walls around, okay, this is where my life was, this is what happened, but I don't remember most of it because my body has suppressed that, and now I can be constructive and move forward with my life. So, but yeah, I remember probably the first time I had like a big memory of actually like getting in my head and having emotional or like psychological just upset was I was watching James Bond with my dad, and it was the one with Halle Berry. Do you remember, what was that one called?
Die for Tomorrow or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And it was James Brosnan or whatever his name is. Yeah. And then there was a scene. It was a sex scene. And I was like 6 or 8 or something like this. Mm. And I remember my dad tapping, like kind of nudging me and going, "Now, son, that's what I call eye candy." He points at Halle Berry.
And you're like, I was looking at.
Literally, I was so perplexed because I wasn't looking at Holly Berry.
Yeah.
I was looking at James, and I was like, oh, am I supposed to be looking at her?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. And I was confused.
Oh,
So that's when I started to suppress things. I started to not talk about my emotions. And then no matter what my parents asked me, like, oh, how are things? How's school? Everything's great, right?
Mm-hmm.
And no matter how much I was being bullied or no matter how much I was, in torment about my sexuality, I'm fine. Everything's fine, right? And it's just from those young ages of not knowing that that's okay or normal. And having those conversations, which has been wild.
That just must be so difficult. Like I have 2 gay sons, and I'm grateful that, we kind of set the table for them that those things are okay to think those things and be there. I can't imagine, like, my best friend's gay, and he didn't come out until his 40s.
I love it.
And, I have one of my brothers, I remember when he was younger, there's 2 things he was afraid of, the Hulk and kissing on TV. And he, so like, I can't call him gay because he's Mormon. And so he doesn't see himself as a gay person. He says he suffers from same-sex attraction. And so, but as a young boy, every time he'd see someone kiss, he'd cover his eyes and, because he was seeing something that just didn't fit, and I see it now, right? And we tease him in all this, but we had no clue. And of course, the way we were taught about homosexuality
very different to how you taught your kids.
Not healthy, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And so, and just the stuff, my best friend went through with trying to figure out, and again, when those feelings aren't acceptable and you can't talk to them, to anyone about them, from what I hear from everyone is this thing of, if I can't feel that, I can't think about it either. And so it's not even on the table. It's not an option. Yeah. And I think that was like that for him for decades.
Yeah. And just hearing your story about your kids just brings me so much joy. The way that your son at 11 years old was able to come up to you and say, hey, Dad, I'm pansexual. That just blows my mind. And I just think that's so freaking cool. Just to hear that, like, a kid at that age has the understanding to really look within himself and understand this is who I am, or this is who I am right now. And that just shows, like, you've had those conversations with your kids. And I love my parents and love you, Mom and Dad, if you're listening. But my mom had her best friend growing up was gay. Her roommate in university was a lesbian, but I didn't know these things. So I didn't know any of this, and that my family was more open and accepting. That my mom especially was an ally to me, and that's someone that I could have talked to. But because we never had those conversations growing up, everything around me, the world around me, going to Catholic school and and hearing from all the kids on the playground and hearing from my older brothers, especially, was that's not okay.
Yeah. Yeah, in much stronger terms, I'm sure.
Much stronger terms, using a lot of words that I don't love.
Yes.
So knowing that, like, that was where my mindset was always at, was like, this is something that I have to hide. And so, it's so hard to wrap your head around, but just like, until I was 18, when I came out to my parents, you're living this double life.
Yeah.
And the emotional, like, trauma that is built into that of just hiding who you are. I mean, as you know, I was in a Christian boy band, as we talked about to start, right? I was head of the Rosary Club at school. I was an altar server all the way through. I was the leader of youth group, and I just was involved in religion in every way possible, because if I couldn't get answers from the world around me, I was just going to put my energy into religion and really focus on that. Because also, if you're the really religious guy, and you're not dating any girls, you're not doing anything with girls, then that makes sense.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
So I use that as well as a scapegoat. So
you're saving yourself for Jesus.
Oh, exactly. In high school, I had a girlfriend, and if you're ever listening to this, I mean, I'm so sorry, but she wanted to do stuff. And I every single time would say, like, no, sorry, that's against my religion.
Yeah.
And like poor girl was just like didn't understand, but she was really respectful. But I used religion as that way that I could kind of excuse why I wasn't interested in girls or didn't talk much to them or with them, that kind of thing.
Wow, yeah, that was an interesting tool you used.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got to use what you can. I mean, you got to survive somehow. So, but yeah, it was wild. What's so interesting, and I've talked to a lot of friends about this since, is a lot of the people I hung out with and that were really close to me, they're all gay now, which is so wild. We found each other. And through school, like for example, Tom. Yeah. Tom, who was in on your podcast a couple of weeks ago, Tom and I were really, really close in high school. We spent a lot of time together. Yeah. Tom was not out. I was not out. But you're comfortable with each other. There's this unspoken, like you surround yourself with people that you know you can be yourself around. Yeah. And my childhood best friend since I was 4 months old, he's gay now. Mm-hmm. And
well, he's always been gay.
He's always
he's out now.
Yeah, no, he's out now. He came out, at like 20 or something like that while I was living in New Zealand, and just like one of my best friends, Kurt, he's out now. Like everybody is just out in some extent, and it's just fantastic that a lot of the people I spent time with are now, in some sense, on some part of the spectrum of sexuality and or gender, and it's beautiful that we were able to find each other and kind of help each other through. Because without friends and without people, like when you're trying to cope as a kid, that just feels like you don't belong.
And I'm sure there's that feeling of you don't even have to express it or say anything, but you can feel that kindred spirit that you're suffering in some way. I'm not really sure. We're not saying anything, but I can feel it. Mm-hmm. And quite honestly, gay men, majority of the time, are much kinder and open and supportive because they're
empaths a lot.
Yeah, and they're bucking that trend of toxic masculinity, and they don't feel good in that realm of what a man is supposed to be.
No, we don't.
And so they kind of reject it. And I do think others feel that connection and feel that, okay, I feel safe around you anyway, because you're not trying to be that
exactly. And it was just magical that we all found each other. And I had a mini little Pride weekend with two of my best friends over Pride, last weekend, 2 weekends ago, over the long weekend. And we were just sitting and reminiscing about that and about how the universe works in such weird and wonderful ways, and how we were attracted to each other, not in a sexual sense attracted, but like attracted to each other life-wise, that we were able to be there together and work through the trauma of going to Catholic school and going through all this stuff together. Because it's wild how you just find those people and finding those people, and that's something that later on in the podcast when you ask me what do I do, because not that I've listened to before, is really about surrounding yourself with good people. Yeah. And that's something I'm so passionate about. Like you don't have time for bad people in your life.
Yeah. Like I know for myself, all through high school, I was, I always describe myself as gay in every way but the bedroom. Mm-hmm. And because being that person and being open to all kinds of things was kind of frowned upon, when I was younger. It doesn't
fit into what a man should be.
Yeah. Right? So, I couldn't go into those areas that I was interested in. So I had to limit myself. And of course, then I'm putting on this image of this, tough guy football player, all these things, the leather jacket, the long hair.
I can picture it. That's awesome.
The beard in high school.
I wish I could grow a beard. I still can't grow a beard. I'm jealous.
I'll have to show you some pictures.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I can see it. I can picture it. You and I know a lot of my LGBTQ friends, so I use my hands, though I'm trying not to hit them.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends in our community, they had that phase where they went, where I used religion as my scapegoat, they used hypermasculinity as theirs. Yeah. Because, nobody's going to question you if you're the football guy or you wear this or you date a lot of girls, like a lot of girls, like those kind of people. because then nobody's going to ask. Yeah. Nobody's going to assume. Yeah. Whereas for me, it was just kind of always assumed.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Like, I don't know, have you heard of, was it Alex Hernandez? What's his first name? I can't remember. He played for the New England Patriots. Okay. Yeah. And he was, played in the NFL, made all this money and everything. But then he got charged and went to prison for him and his buddy killing someone.
Oh, yes, I have heard of this.
And the story, they did a documentary on his life. And, of course, he had him and his best friend experimented. That's the terms they would use, But he was gay. Yeah. But, of course, to hide, he became this ultimate womanizer, tough guy, gangster, and he did some pretty horrendous things. But it was always, kind of in the vein of, I'm trying to portray this image of this.
Because he's so at war with himself inside that he has to fight on the outside. Yeah. And it's so sad. You see it all the time. And I see it less now, which is really cool. And especially, with younger patients and people that you just see them being themselves now. Mm-hmm. And it's the norm to be queer.
Yeah.
And that's just super cool.
Yeah. Like I just cannot imagine, and I think a lot of our listeners, try to put your head in this, in your mind, this, so that, at a very young age, you're different, you feel differently and you have different desires, but society won't let you think about those things. Mm-hmm. And to fit in and to be loved and accepted, you have to put this mask on for decades to be this other person.
It's exhausting.
And, that's what I'm like.
Exhausting.
Yeah, tell me more.
And yeah, it's just the things that you say and do to really try. And you're spending every day in fear. You are so scared that today is going to be the day that somebody finds out who you really are. Wow. And no kid, no matter how old, should have to deal with that. And that's why I'm very much outspoken of who I am as a member of the community and the LGBT community, as being a gay chiropractor, is I want people to see that this is normal, that being gay is normal. And there are people in your community that are somewhere on the spectrum of some sort of sexuality or gender or wherever you fit in. But yeah, growing up you're just in fear every day, and you're so scared that your family's going to find out or someone's going to find out you're going to slip. So you're walking on eggshells constantly. And I wasn't lucky enough to be one of those people that doesn't have, classical gay mannerisms. The way I spoke and the way I walked and moved was a little bit more feminine. Mm-hmm. I remember, it was traumatizing. In elementary school, my nickname was Gay Boy. Ouch. Right? And kids would be like, "Hey, Gay Boy, how's it going?" Like, that was the normal for them. And, you just laugh it off and you don't just, no, that's not true. Or like people, some guy a year ahead of you will come up to you on the playground like, "Hey, like, are you gay? It's totally cool if you are, but like, bro, are you gay?" And I know you're allowed to swear on this podcast.
You can swear.
You're shitting your pants. Yeah. Right? Because then you have to like, no. And then you like overcompensate. Like, no, I'm totally not. Right? Yeah. And you're going through that every day. On the same time, like, you're also going through things that normal kids go through.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're really having to mature so quickly. And that comes what I was talking about earlier, how you often find that young queer kids hang out with the adults more than the kids, because they haven't gone what you've gone through. These other kids they're out having fun and playing. Yeah. Whereas you're not thinking about that. You're thinking about, are they going to find out that I'm gay? Are they going to kick me out of the house? Are they going to send me to conversion therapy? Are they going to X, Y, Z? Mm-hmm. So you're just so scared about that if you can sit and have mature, so it forces you to mature so much more quickly than the average kid, that you don't get along with them. You feel like you fit in more with the adults, which is crazy. So it really robs you of a lot of your childhood, where you're forced to just have these complex thoughts and really self-actualize at such a young age, where we don't expect like all these other young kids to be able to make decisions on their own. That's why we have like a lot of kids, for example, in the justice system, they're treated as kids compared to adults because they're not supposed to have the same understanding of the world.
Yeah.
So if we expect kids to not be able to do that in the justice system, then why do we expect kids who are growing up gay, like, you know what I mean, like to have that same, like they're forced to treat themselves like an adult and think like an adult when they're 12.
Yeah.
So that's where a lot of the kind of trauma sets in, right?
Yeah.
Is dealing with that. And there's just so many stories within that. And a lot of them I really honestly can't remember. I have friends that will talk to me and be like, hey, remember that time I did this to you? I'm really sorry. And I'm like, honestly, I didn't remember. Like, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating because you just block it all out.
Yeah. I don't think straight people really understand
what
that is like.
And that's why for all the parents out there, like, create a space for your kids where it's okay to talk and a space that they can feel themselves and expose them to different people. Like, don't keep, like, I love Okotoks and I'm so happy I grew up here because it's so safe. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's the school system's amazing. But what my dad always doesn't understand, and we have had amazing conversations and now he does, is I didn't feel safe growing up here because there was no queer representation.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't see a pride parade. I didn't see a rainbow anywhere. I didn't see, there wasn't a single member of the public that was openly gay while I was growing up that I knew.
Yeah.
So for me, it wasn't a safe space. So for all the parents out there to really think about, you know, for your child, expose them to the world, expose them to different types of food from all around the world, expose them to different types of cultures from all around the world, expose them to different types of sexualities and genders, and, you know, take them to a drag show for God's sakes.
Yeah.
You know, we have amazing drag queens and drag kings here in Calgary. Here in Okotoks. In Okotoks, we have, you know, like Shane on You is from Okotoks, and they I believe at the library they do readings, right? Drag kings and queens reading stories to your kids. They're not scary people.
Yeah.
They're amazing people. So like exposing your children to stuff like that on the odd chance that they are queer, it'll make the world to them.
Yeah.
And then if they're not, it'll make them more tolerant and accepting individuals.
Exactly.
Which is even more important because we need that.
Yeah. I've, you know, I took all my kids before any of them came out when they were still quite young, took them all to the Pride Parade in Calgary.
Awesome. Yeah.
Because I wanted them to see that, you know, this is something to be celebrated and supported rather than, you know, whatever. And, you know, I took them to the Pride Parade every year, you know, until, you know, a couple of years ago, you know, and
that's just so cool.
I do think that helped my two sons to be able to
have those conversations because they felt, hey, you know, this is something that is normalized to them, so they can actually talk about it. Whereas for me, you know, I'm in religion class in school. I remember, like, this is a distinct memory, and I don't have a lot of memories throughout high school, but it's my religion teacher literally sitting down with me or sitting down with the class and talking about being gay and how, you know, if you're gay and you act on it, you're going to hell.
Yeah.
And, you know, and this is the same rhetoric that had been discussed since I was young in religion class. And I don't know if that's part of the curriculum or what, because I talked to my mom who works at the school, and they've checked in and they're like, no, we don't teach that. And I was like, well, then why are we hearing that as kids?
Yeah.
You know, that if you're gay, you're going to hell. And then we also were taught that if you wear condoms, you're going to hell because that's against God. So no wonder all these poor young girls are, you know, having to make these really hard decisions because they're getting pregnant at 14.
Yeah.
Because they're taught not to use a condom. Like, that's an issue in our school system. And that's like, that just boggles my head. Like, we need, like,
drives me fucking nuts.
It drives me fucking nuts too. It really does. Like, it just, we need to educate our people, and we can't use religion as an excuse to not educate our people about the world around them, because people are sexual beings. They're going to explore themselves and explore other people, and you can't stop that.
Yeah.
Some people will choose not to because religion, and that's beautiful, and they can do that, and I totally support that. But for the people that aren't, for the majority, the massive majority that aren't going to save themselves till marriage, to wait to have kids and wait to have sex, to not teach that is crazy. Anyways, segue, but mind blowing that happened.
I think that's a whole nother
discussion, right?
Like,
and just going back to like the religion side of it with being gay and just hearing that as a kid, you know, that is traumatizing hearing growing up from your teachers who you respect and love. Like, you can't be this.
Yeah.
Like, this is not good.
So just wild. The common story I hear from a lot of, my gay friends when they're younger is this, they felt they had to be perfect. Mm-hmm. Because, I have to have the best grades. I have to do everything mom and dad want. Because if they ever find out, I have to have so much in the emotional bank account with my parents and with everyone.
That's an interesting way of thinking of it.
That if they do find out, hopefully they'll still love me because I did everything right.
That is so interesting.
Or God, even the same way, right?
That I did everything else right. And I know a lot of people, if you think about it, there's a lot of successful gay people or queer people in general. I find, and the reason that I thought of it was separate from that was society tells you every day that you're wrong growing up. So you feel like you need to prove something.
Yeah.
So you do the best in class. You work your ass off in school. You get some high-level job somewhere. You're a doctor of something, or you're a PhD in this, or you're the CEO of this, because you have to prove to the world that you are worthy, because the world has been telling you that you're not since you were young. And going in with your side of things too, like maybe if you do enough, then when they find out, they'll still love you because you've done other good things. And that's just nobody.
What a terrible place to be in.
Nobody should
have
to think that way. But I mean, this conversation has been a little bit doom and gloom. But like that's how I grew up. But that's not how things are right now.
Yes,
for most people. Mm-hmm. You hear a lot of stories, and they're awful. Of kids still, they ask if they can go by a different name because they identify as a different gender, and their parents refuse, and they tell their school that they're not allowed to use that name. Like, and so that does still happen. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, people are so much more accepting and open, and they're having conversations now about it with their kids, and queer people are visible. We're not invisible anymore.
Yeah,
which is fantastic to see.
I think the real struggle right now is for all the transgendered kids, because now society's been able to shift enough that we're more accepting, not totally accepting.
More accepting of gay people.
Yeah, they're moving there. And then now there's this whole other thing that they just do not understand.
Oh, yeah. Gender to people not in the millennial or Gen X or what's Gen Z, the young ones, in that generation, the idea of gender to them is so foreign. It's alien and it's super simple. So for anybody out there, the way gender works is that gender and sex are not the same thing. Mm-hmm. So your sex is what you're born with. Penis or vagina, male, female. Yeah. Your gender is how you fit into the world that society has built. Our society has built this construct of two genders, man and woman. And man is masculine, woman is feminine. Mm-hmm. I'm not a spokesperson for the transgender community, so I may say things wrong here, but the way I understand gender is it's how you fit into that spectrum, not the binary. It's no longer the binary of man and woman. Yeah. There's a spectrum of man to woman, and a lot of it is the spectrum of masculinity to femininity and where you fit along that and how you identify. So your gender is not your sex. Yeah. Men can have vaginas. Men can have penises. Women can have vaginas. Women can have penises. That is a concept that's really foreign to older generations, and young kids get that what genitals you have does not make what gender you are. Yeah. And some people do have gender reassignment surgery, and that's beautiful, and that's part of their transition. But transition for other people just means their name's different and that they wear different clothes. Yeah. Transition for other people might mean they took hormone therapy and they've had one surgery or two or whatever. But the idea of gender is just fascinating and beautiful, and it's something to be celebrated, that we're breaking down this binary of male and female, and that we're allowing expression on either side or in between. And just allowing that to be normalized is fantastic. And it definitely is, like you said, the next frontier of our fight as the LGBTQ community. Mm-hmm. We fought for gay rights. That started at Stonewall by transgender women of color. Yeah. I will remind everybody out there. Mm-hmm. And we've had pride ever since. for some reason along the way, transgender people were forgotten, and it was just focused on gay people.
Yeah.
In media especially, it became like, every show had the quintessential lesbian, super flamboyant gay.
Yeah.
Which is beautiful, but I mean, there should be more representation than just one specific version of someone. And then lesbians were not as much portrayed in society, but more in people's fantasy was normalized, which is a whole nother topic. Yeah. I don't know how that all works. That we don't need to get into, but the kind of fetishization of that and the normalization of that. But then we forgot about trans rights, and people just became so focused on gay people, lesbians, and normalizing that, but not talking about the rest of the queer community.
Yeah, I think, back in the, 80s, 90s when things were shifting, I think a lot of people in the gay community were like, okay, things are shifting. We don't want to be associated with that right now because we got to focus on this being accepted. That's a little too much. We're not ready for that. No one's ready for that. So they kind of threw him under the bus a little.
Yeah. But now we're ready.
Yeah, now we're ready. So it's totally fine. I would expand on that, what you said too, where, there's your biological sex, which are your chromosomes, right? Then there's your gender, which is how you choose to express yourself to the world. And then there's your sexual orientation,
which is completely separate.
From those two things.
Sex is what you're born as male or female, what parts you have. Gendered, like you said, is how you fit into society, where you are on that beautiful spectrum of masculinity to femininity, man to woman. And then sexuality is completely different. Yeah. Sexuality is your preference for who you want to be with, who you love, who you want to go home to. That is sexuality. Yeah. Nothing to do with gender.
Yeah. And I think that's hard for some people to understand because they're like, well, how can a transgendered woman be in a relationship with a woman? Yeah. Didn't she become a woman so she could be with men?
Yeah, because they're nothing to do with the binary of straight versus like being straight and cisgendered. And cisgendered means you identify with the same parts that you were born with. Yeah. So like I would identify as a cisgendered male. So for anybody that doesn't know what that means, so that's the opposite of trans. Cis. Trans.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's just wild that we've had to explain these things in such a way, but it's beautiful in the same sense that people are now having these conversations and kids. Oh, I just love young kids that are able to have conversations about gender and identity with older people and explain them in such beautiful ways. Like you just hear some things. Yeah. And it's just awesome. Yeah. It's just awesome.
I heard a really interesting explanation of how to help people better express people's gender. And it's like, you're at the dog park and you see a dog and you're like, oh, your dog's so pretty. What's her name? And they'll be like, it's
Bruce.
Bruce or whatever, right? Yeah. It's Bruce. He's a boy. Yeah. And you're like, oh, okay.
Every single time you talk to a dog, you have that conversation.
Yeah. And then immediately people had no problem switching genders on that dog. We make guesses and we're wrong and it's no big deal. So we fix it. We need to be able to think that same way.
Oh, absolutely.
With people's gender.
And that's why if you look at my Instagram, and a lot of people's Instagram, my pronouns are on my Instagram. So it says Daxon Jones, he, him.
Yeah.
And the reason I do that, and the reason you'll see a lot of people starting to do that these days, is to normalize gender pronouns and to asking what pronouns are, so that way so for transgender people putting their pronouns on their Instagram or wherever they are, they're being targeted as, oh, they must be transgender because their pronouns are on there.
Yeah.
Whereas we're just normalizing that everybody has pronouns, and if you introduce yourself with your pronouns, you are taking away that conversation. So people aren't having to assume anything. What was so cool about this last Pride was there was a live stream on Twitch, a live stream of Calgary Pride, and they had performers throughout the entire day. They had musicians, they had guest speakers the entire weekend, which was just fantastic that they've adapted through COVID times.
Mm-hmm.
The CEO of ATB Financial came on and he said, "Hi, my name is blah, 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 blah. My pronouns are he, him." And then he started talking.
Yeah.
And I was just like, how cool is that? That people, and then every single person that came on after that said, "This is my name, these are my pronouns." And that way, we're normalizing that asking what your pronouns are is a thing, that you can have pronouns that are different from how you present yourself, or that it kind of takes away the guessing game. And just normalizing that people don't have to fit into that, what you assume of them. And, my best friend, Max, is a transgender woman, and she is just like a huge inspiration to me. But talking to her about pronouns has been fascinating, and it's taught me so much. And realizing that it's okay to ask, like, "Hey, what are your pronouns?" Or like, "Hey," or use non-gender specific terms until you know. Until they either tell you or until you ask. And it's normal to ask. And I think a lot of people in older generations might think that, because that's such a foreign concept to them, they wouldn't ask that. But like, "Hey, oh, by the way, what are your pronouns?" Like, "Oh, he, him, sweet." Or they, them. "Oh, awesome." Yeah. So it's a normal conversation to ask, and that would mean so much to a trans person or a non-binary person to ask them that, which means that you care and that you want to correctly identify them as an individual. And I explained this to family before, when it comes to pronouns, I know we've been talking about it for a little while here, but it's because it's so important to a lot of cisgendered straight people. They might go, like, "What's the big deal? It's just a word. Who cares?" And for you, it doesn't, because you have no emotional attachment to that. But for that, 14-year-old kid or 18-year-old kid who has been traumatized and tormented their entire life, and how those two words mean everything to them.
It means, I accept you, I'm an ally, I understand you.
Yeah. So those words, their pronouns, has been something that they have struggled with and that they have had to overcome and come to terms with, and have the audacity to come out and ask you to use those. If they've done that, you have no idea how much emotional torment they went through to do that.
Yeah.
So give them the respect by trying.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And not going, "Oh, it's just a couple words."
Yeah.
But it's not. And to that person, for you, it's a few words. To that person, it's who they are. And they've had to work through a lot of stuff to get to that point. So just like you said, to say those words to them, they feel safe.
Yeah.
And you have no idea how powerful that is, which is just amazing.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely amazing.
And I don't think, our community understands enough how painful it is, for people in the closet or, transgender kids. All we have to do is look at the suicide rates and how much greater a risk, LGBTQ people are, it's, for, dying of suicide, because when you don't feel accepted, when you don't feel love, when you don't feel you fit in, and you get in a really dark place in your mind, you're like, the only relief is out of this world. Yeah. And which is scary.
It's so scary. The 1 in 3 transgender people has been homeless in their life or will be homeless.
Yeah, because parents will just kick them out because they don't know what to do.
Jobs won't hire them. Jobs will fire them.
Yeah.
1 in 3, and this is Canada. I think the stat is, I think it's 50% of transgender children, youth, will, or maybe it's higher than that. It might be 60%. There is a beautiful statistic. I'm sorry if I get it wrong. Not beautiful, horrifying. 60% of trans people have attempted suicide.
Yeah, that's and they probably, majority of them have considered it.
Or considered, and
but that's a lot to attempt.
And I think the stat is around 30% are successful.
Wow.
1/3 of trans kids.
Yeah, we've lost already.
We've lost. Yeah. And that's, hopefully changing, and hopefully that statistic goes down. But I mean, I heard that statistic last year when I was at a drag show, and there was this incredible drag performer that came up, and they did this number to the song by Rabel, and it was just mind-blowing. It's called The Village, and I would recommend you all to listen to it just to get into the mindset of what it's like to be othered or on the outside. And they were performing this number, and then on the screen behind them, all these statistics start to come up. And they kind of preambled this with before they talked, and I was already crying when this started because it was they talked about these statistics, and then this drag performer had recently had top surgery, which for those who don't know, that means that they had their breasts removed. So they took off their shirt
to show the scars.
And they were fresh scars. And so there's the song that's super emotional. They just talked about the statistics around suicide and homelessness and all of that. And then this performer comes up and does this song and takes their shirt off and says, "This is me. This is who I am. And I made it. I made it out." That just like threw me. Yeah. I was just sobbing. But it's so powerful. And we don't realize that like those statistics are crazy high. And it's upsetting. But there are things that we can do. Yeah. Like talk about it and go to Pride. Ask questions. It's just ask people.
Yeah, there's an organization here in Calgary and Foothills. I'm trying to remember right now. I don't know if it's I'll put a link in the description for the podcast, everyone. But it is like I was on a Zoom meeting recently with parents in the Foothills community for kids that are in the LGBTQ group, and I was in the meeting with several parents and I was the only one of the gay kid. All the rest in there were parents with kids who were transgendered. Mm-hmm. And it's, terrifying, the stuff they're going through. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to name any names, but I just want to share this story so people get some perspective. Cool. There's one family, the father's from, West Africa, and the mom's here from Canada, very religious. In that country, it is illegal to be gay or transgendered. You can be killed, and so during COVID, things already got quite heated at home. And so she had to leave the house from abuse. And so they're, out of that, but now she's trying to work things out because her transgender daughter wants to change her name start of the school year here and, wants all that support. But they're begging the school not to share any of this information with the father because if he finds out, he will beat this child to death.
And that,
this is happening in our community.
Here. This is here,
this
right?
Is in our community.
And that's one story that is somebody who's spoken out, and there will be more than one.
Yeah,
absolutely. And we need to talk about it, and we need to, as people who understand this, if you see a kid going through this, like, that's why using their pronouns, if they've said that they want to use these pronouns, like, God, they're going through that torment at home. Yeah. Use the pronouns or use the name that they ask you to use and protect that kid. Like, that's just, like, for me, coming out as gay was hard enough. I can't imagine going through what that child is going through.
Yeah.
Like, I have enough trauma built up from what I went through, but what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, I'm just me thinking about those parents. I'm like, what are you, like, or the dad? You have a choice here. You can either cause unreparable damage in your relationship to your child and your child's mental health and their future, or you can, instead of being selfish, take time, think about why do I feel this way? Maybe I need to educate myself. Maybe I need to talk to someone. Yeah. And that would change your perspective completely. Yeah. It just makes me so sad. Yeah. It makes me so sad. And that's why when people say, like, why do you guys still have Pride? We accept you. And it's like, well, are you hearing these stories?
Yeah. Why do you still have the stampede?
Yeah. We get it. You're straight. You like horses, but it's wild. It's wild. And we have so much work to do on just creating and spreading love in our community and making, at Thrive where I work, our mission is to make the Okotoks and surrounding area, the foothills area, the happiest and healthiest place to live in Canada. Yeah. And we're not going to achieve that if kids are being tormented or being abused at home. And, that's why it's important for me to talk about these things and to be a out person in our community and say, like, hey, if you need to talk to someone, please, talk to me. Reach out. We need to support each other through this and really help each other heal. So.
Yeah. I really think we can all learn something from people in the LGBT community that have come out. Because, of all my gay friends, one thing that is common in them all is there's this just zest for life and this just confidence and peace in them because they've gone through so much already, and just accepting who they are and embracing just allowing themselves to be themselves is so infectious and powerful. And I think a lot of us, straight people, are still hiding from who we are because we're still trying to fit into this image of what we're supposed to be.
You see it every day, right? You see the guys who, they all feel like they have to dress in these long shorts and T-shirts and a skater hat, and they can't express themselves further because they'll be made fun of from their straight friends. They can't like shoes. They can't like fashion. They can't like pop music. They have to drink beer. Because
I hate beer.
I hate beer too. They can't drink any of those fruity drinks, right?
Yeah, I love the fruity drinks. Yeah,
you're right. And so there's this image of toxic masculinity, which is very alive in Okotoks. Yeah, very, very alive in this community and in the surrounding communities. And we need to remind ourselves and remind people and have conversations with these men that you can be yourself, and that's people, and that's why you're saying all your queer friends, they're infectious because they know who they are because they've had to go through so much to finally accept themselves and to have the bravery to go into society like that every day. So to have these conversations with straight people who are not being themselves because they're feeling like they're having to sit into a box. And I kind of joke with my friends all the time, but I am so glad. I'm so glad I'm gay. Yeah, because I can't imagine having to do that every day. Straight adults are going through what gay kids had to go through. At least they're adults now, but they have to fit into this box where we have to watch football on Sundays, and which if you love doing that, please do that. But you don't have to, only play golf and like football and drink beer and.
Well, and they're still trying to be accepted.
Yeah, because they're trying to fit into
still
that,
trying to fit
be accepted.
In, rather than just doing what they love and being who they are.
The people in our community that people are attracted to the most are the people who are authentically themselves. Yeah. And that's
authentic, breeds confidence. Yeah. Brings that energy of peace that just, just comes off of them. And you're just like, wow, I like being around this person.
Yeah, there's something so sexy about confidence, right? Yeah. Like you want to be around those kind of people. And it's so important. And I just hope that we can continue to not only grow acceptance and tolerance and love for the queer community, the LGBTQ community, but also for people that don't fit into the binary of masculinity as well, that they have to be this macho man. Because it must be exhausting all day for them to do that too. I can imagine, I've been through that on the other side. So, it's okay just to be yourself and like things that are different from other people. Yeah. I mean, I think you're a beautiful example of that, you're authentically who you are as a straight dad. And I think that's just fantastic. You would just exude this confidence of who you are, and you don't apologize for that. And people want to be around you because of it. And I think that's admirable, and we need more of that in our community.
Yeah. It's interesting. I remember when I was a missionary. So here I am.
Back in the day?
Back in the day when I was a missionary for the Mormon church. Mm-hmm. I was out working with one missionary, my companion at the time. And we're walking down the street, and I see this little raised Toyota truck or whatever, right? And the way it was done up, and I'm like, and the guy I'm with is ultimate toxic masculinity guy,
Yeah.
right? Football player, fixed his own trucks and restored them, all this, all that stuff.
Which, by the way, is amazing if that's what you like doing, and what you want to do, but not because you feel like you have to.
Yeah. It's just who he was, right?
Yeah, no, exactly.
The country boy, and I'm walking
I know
along,
that type.
and I see it, and I'm like, oh, that's a cute truck.
Oh, I love that.
And he just lost it, and he's like,
that's not cute.
You can't call a truck cute. What are you doing? And he just went off.
No.
Like, he would not let me forget that, and he would tease and harass me about that for ever. And then
just use the word cute. Why can't a straight man use the word cute?
Yes.
What is going on here?
But what's crazy is then, so I dealt with that and dealing with that guy and we were still good friends, but I just had to understand that that's who he was, right?
Yeah, and then you have to make the compensation. And you have to say, Exactly.
He didn't fully accept me, but that's totally fine. I was totally fine with that. But then my next companion was my best friend, who hadn't come out of the closet yet, and just being able to say and be and whatever around him all the time, because he was that same guy, and that's why we just became the best of friends, because still to this day we accept each other no matter what.
Exactly.
And
you didn't
we can
feel
be
like
whatever.
you had to be this image of a man around him. You could be just whoever you are.
Yeah.
And that's just
amazing. And there's something about that, and that's what makes real friendship, is when you can really connect and accept someone no matter what. And same as parents. Like, that's what makes an awesome parent, is when you just you create that space for your child to communicate with you and express their concerns and accept them no matter what.
And this is a PSA for all people out there wanting to have a kid.
Yeah.
If you I'm going to get hate mail.
Gender reveal? Are you going to get
we're going to get into the gender reveal.
That drives me nuts.
Oh, yeah. If you are not going to accept your kid no matter who they are, if you are already pre-planning that your kid has to be man or woman, like trucks or like dresses, and fit into this, you're pre-planning their entire existence, don't have kids. Please don't. We don't need any more of that.
Yeah. And your child doesn't deserve that.
Your child doesn't deserve that. Your child deserves to grow up in a family that they feel like they can be whoever they want to be, and that they can play with trucks and wear a dress, or they can do whatever they want to do. And if they fit into the normal binary of things, then perfect. Majority probably will. But if they don't, then they know that that's okay.
Yeah.
If you're not going to accept your kid no matter what, don't have kids, is the moral of the story.
Yeah.
Right? Think about that before you start trying, right?
Yeah.
And please, for God's sake, don't have a gender reveal.
Oh, gee.
I just, they're the worst.
Half of those fires in California right now were started by a gender reveal party that used pyrotechnics.
Oh, yeah, I know. God said, enough of this.
I hate gender reveal parties.
I hate that. Here's the thing. You're not having a gender reveal party. You're having a penis or vagina reveal party.
Yeah.
Is what you're having. But you're pre-assigning their entire identity with that. Yeah. So if you're going to have a reveal party, have a sex reveal party where you dress everything up with penises, or make everything have a vagina cake. You know what I mean? This is their, which sounds kind of weird, right? It's we're having a penis party, or we're having a vagina party.
Yeah. And those dads that get all upset when it's pink and they don't have a penis.
God, I hate that.
Now, I was talking to my son about this the other day, and I think the reasoning is people are just looking for a reason to celebrate that they're pregnant.
Yes, exactly.
So there's nothing wrong with this. Yeah, to have a little party and all that. I do think, again, you're saving this memory and you're planning on showing it to your kid later. What happens when that kid is a transgender kid, or struggling with that,
gender reveal, that should be you should have that. That should be the new bar mitzvah. I was talking to friends about this the other day. That should be the new thing that you have when you decide as a teen or an adult. This is how I identify. Yeah. My friend Max, we were joking, we had a little, the three of us had a little get together the other day with our pride thing that I was telling you about, and we had a little party, just the three of us, and it was amazing. And afterwards, is that my gender reveal party?
I was just gonna say, Max needs to have a gender reveal party,
right? Because that was taken away from them. They don't get to actually reveal who they are as an individual.
Yeah.
So pre-assigning that as a child before they're even born yet, they're not even able to do anything. And you're already pre-telling them that, blue is what you're going to wear and you're going to play with trucks and you're going to do X, Y, Z. Or if you're a girl, then, better keep all the boys away, which, oh my God, that's a whole nother topic around pre-sexualization of children, of making it okay that men are going to chase after them and are going to harass them, that women have to be okay with that. That's a whole other thing that I'm not okay with. So please don't tell young girls, wow, you're going to have to get a dad a baseball bat. Please stop doing that. It's really not healthy.
I saw this great cartoon the other day, and it was this, it's this boy, he's showing up to pick up this dad's daughter first day on a date.
Yeah.
And he tells the boy, I just want you to know that if you do anything to hurt her, anything to, do anything inappropriate or anything like that, I want you to know that she is going to kick your ass.
I love that.
It's not the dad. It's, I trust my daughter and she's going to take care of herself.
But why don't we say that for young boys, right? When girls are taking them on a date, you don't say, listen here, lady, if you treat my son wrong, blah, blah, why is it that we only do that for men? That women are this fragile thing that need to be protected and men have to be this. So just getting away from that, we don't need that. You can celebrate your baby, celebrate that you're having a baby, have a party. Don't light forests on fire and cause millions and millions of dollars worth of damage. But just have a party, but don't pre-assign what your child's going to be. Let them just, surround them with things that they can explore and experiment. Let them play and let them build. Let them be children.
Baby shower's enough.
Baby showers are fun.
That's neutral.
Have a baby shower and just it's, or even better, just wait until they're born. You don't even have to have a gender reveal. It's wonderful. But it's a whole other side of things.
I know.
It's fun.
And again, if you've had a gender reveal party or have one planned, we're not saying you're a terrible person. But just think of the alternatives
think of what that's portraying, or what it's pre-assigning to you.
And again, when we're saying all these things, it's if a parent is listening and oh shit, I didn't really support my kid, I didn't really do the right things. We're not judging you as a parent. We're trying to just lay out an alternate path for those that have that chance now to make those choices.
We're just talking about this is our perception. This is specifically my perception on things and how I see the world. And how maybe you can learn something from my perception, just like I can learn something from everybody else's. And maybe I can, there's things that I can do better and ways that I can communicate with people better and have more tolerance for other people. And I want to learn those things. I want people to tell me those things. So I think that's why I'm not here to shame anybody. And I'm super sorry if anybody feels that way. I am just very unapologetic, I think, about my passions and my views, especially when it comes to my community.
So when you were younger, even today, what kind of tools and things have you used in the past and currently use to help you with your mental health?
That is a great question. Another one that I knew you were going to ask. Another one that my brain wanted to prep for and that I couldn't. You just can't do it. So the thing that I think is the most important is good people. Surrounding yourself with good people. And that's hard. And that's something that I realized this year is good people and having good relationships takes work. And you also don't need to have people in your life that don't build you up. So you need to surround yourself with people that are driven, people that are passionate, people that are accepting of who you are no matter what, so that you can be lifted up by the people you're around. If you're hanging out with people and you're feeling exhausted afterwards, or you're like, oh, I can't believe they said that. You don't need those people. You have this is your life, and you get to surround yourself with the people that really are beautiful. So that's something that I focus a lot on, is having good people in my life. And having people that I can actually talk about this kind of thing with, talk about mental health, check in with people that check in on you. And building that community. And it takes work and it takes time. It's not like all of a sudden you have this group of 10 friends who are just these amazing, emotionally intelligent human beings that can have all these great conversations. But, it takes time. But there's this step one to get to that, I think, that I found out was this beautiful thing called the mute button or the unfollow button. If people are posting things, especially right now, that just get your blood boiling, just mute them. You don't need to listen to that right now. You don't need to bring any more negativity into your life. That's going to affect your mental state. and surround yourself with positive things. Like, don't read the news all day, every day. You're going to go crazy. Don't just scroll through Facebook aimlessly and reading everybody's crazy posts about their views on X, Y, Z, because you're going to go crazy. So limiting your exposure to those negative stressors by either muting them when it comes to social medias and online stuff, and as well just spending your time with people who are positive and lift you up. So that's kind of step one for me, is like having a core of good people.
Yeah.
And I'm very lucky that I've cultivated that and created that within my community.
On that, just to interrupt, one thing I'll say about that too is I find, I have a few friends that I love in person, but I don't like who they are online. Oh yeah. So I just don't follow them. I turn that off, so I don't see their posts. And when we're in public, when I'm around them, I enjoy these people because they would never say those things in public.
They're keyboard warriors, yeah.
And they never bring it up, and so I think, I don't think, people's online persona are really a representation of who they are.
It's not.
It's just a small part of them that is still trying to learn and, open up and change. And so I still accept that, that's just where they are right now with that.
Yep.
And, but outside of that, they're still a really fun person. They're pretty cool. Exactly. I just, we just don't talk about those things.
Yeah. And it's about compartmentalizing how much emotional headspace you're going to give that individual, because you have a certain amount of, I like to call it emotional real estate. You have a certain amount of real estate in your head and how much you can give. And if somebody is, taking a lot of your real estate up and taking a lot of your emotional time, and it's not being constructive to you, like, you don't need that. So like you're doing, when you're with them, they're building you up. It's good emotional time, and it's worth that for you. But they're who they are online. They're online crazy version of themselves. You don't need that. So learning about and like checking in with yourself and actually thinking, okay, what are the things about them? X, Y, Z. Perfect. Okay, this part makes me happy. This part doesn't. I'm gonna take away that part.
Yeah.
You have, you're in charge of your own life. Yeah. I think that's amazing. So doing that is just super valuable, and learning to surround yourself with good people.
Yeah. What was your step 2?
Step 2. So step 1, brain.
Good people.
Good people. Step 2 is, I would say, having some sort of routine around mental health. And this comes down to that understanding of, this is not something that you either have or don't, like we talked about at the beginning. It is something that you work on consistently, and it's like a good relationship. You can't just have a relationship and like, we're married now, I'm just not going to put any effort in. You have to put in effort. So your emotional state and your mental health is exactly the same way. So having a good routine. So I know people have been on here and have talked about, like journaling or X, Y, Z for them, which is just fantastic. And for me, what I've realized about myself is I don't have any specific, like, actually, no, that's kind of a lie. So gratitude journaling is something I do. Yeah. At the end of the day, whether it's in my head, I prefer to write it down. This is something we talk to our patients a lot about as well, is writing 3 things down that you're grateful for every single day before bed. Getting yourself in that positive mindset of, what good was in my day, and having gratitude for it. It could be something that was possibly, like we talked about, a negative thing that happened, but I can have gratitude for the negative thing and say, okay, this taught me this. Yeah. So I can move forward and learn more. Like, I realized that I was uneducated about this, and now I learned more from it, X, Y, Z. So a gratitude journal, 3 things you're grateful for in the day. I do that at the end of the day. And I do that on my phone or just in my head before I go to bed. Really just gets you in a positive mindset. Helps you sleep too. It's fantastic. Managing my stress is something that I think is really important. And my emotional well-being around that, my mental state, is constantly checking in. I feel like a lot of us don't take enough time to check in with ourselves and say, how am I doing?
Yeah.
Like, what's up, Dax? How you doing, buddy? Like, feeling okay today? Like, what's going on in your head? And sitting in silence for a few minutes and actually talking to yourself in your head. And like, you don't actually have to have that conversation, but really just saying, okay, where am I at? I'm the kind of person that feels absolutely drained after certain social situations. You know, when you're surrounded by people or a family event, sometimes I just need to like leave the room, disappear for a few minutes, just to, like, because it's overwhelming sometimes to me. But I understand like what makes I need social interaction. I'm a very social person, but I know that
where your limits are.
Where my limits are, and then the equal amount of time that I'm really social, I also need alone time and downtime to connect. So checking with yourself and saying, like, hey, how am I doing? And do I need some me time? Do I need to go for a walk? Do I need to read something? Do I need to listen to a podcast? XYZ. So checking with yourself, I think, is really important, and saying, how am I doing? And then if there are things that aren't great, then okay, solution-oriented thinking. Yeah. What can I do? What are some action steps I can make in my day tomorrow to correct how I'm feeling today? Yeah. And things that I do to correct that are podcasting. I'm a huge podcast listener. I listen to many a day or a week, I guess. Just finding things that you enjoy that really just like get you out of that space. Like I'm a huge astrophysics nerd. So I listen to Neil deGrasse Tyson's podcast, Star Talk. Listen to that every week. I listen to Bulletproof Radio with Dave Asprey, all about biohacking, optimizing your function as a human being, which is fantastic. I'm a bit of a, like a lot of people know this about me. I'm not a gamer. I don't actually play really many games, but I have a weird thing that I really like watching, like competitive esports. So instead of watching football or hockey or soccer, I watch a bunch of nerds sit around and play video games. It's fantastic.
A lot of people like that now. Like my kids love watching people play games.
Yeah. So I watch competitive esports as well, and that's a way that I can just like disconnect, think strategy, and think kind of like that. Music, I know you've had a lot of musicians on here. Music is something that is just fantastic, and I'm so grateful. Like we were talking about this just before, that I've joined the Foothills Philharmonic Orchestra. It's a string orchestra right now because obviously no wind instruments allowed. Yeah. But it's fantastic. I've been wanting to get back into playing music again, so I play string bass in that, and it's just a weekly thing where it's this routine that it's like a wellness routine that I get to sit and I get to focus on music. And there's something so special about music, how from a neuroscience perspective, you are taking auditory stimulus, you're listening to rhythm as well as pitch, and then you're taking that in and you are also reading, so taking in visual stimulation.
Yeah, both sides of the brain at once.
And it's a new language. So you're reading another language, which is just super stimulating to the brain. So you're taking in all that, and then you're building that in your brain and immediately moving that into a motor function where you're actually engaging certain muscles to create music. And then as you're creating that music, you're also listening to your tune, your timing, and how you're fitting into that big picture. So I 100% recommend for kids out there, like, play music. Yeah. It is so amazing for your brain and what it does to stimulate it and allow you to really have a complex task that you're doing, which will bring down that anxiety like you've talked about with, if your adrenaline is high, like your patient that has that skipping rope, right? Yeah. If you listen to those other episodes, she needs that skipping rope to burn that adrenaline. And, music can be kind of like that. You're so hyper-focused that you're just giving everything into that. And it's fantastic. So keep playing music. And for kids that want to quit, parents making me play piano, it's so worth it. Yeah. It's just the best thing ever. So keep doing that.
Yeah. It's a whole part of, humanity that is such a huge part of who we are, that when, we don't encourage that or people don't take that step into music, it's a part of our soul, a part of our DNA that we're not working with. And I'm sure even those that can't, the only instrument I play is the radio. I love that. Or Spotify. But still, I can appreciate it. I sing. I
was going to say you're a singer.
I've done musicals, all the whatever, but I'm not great. But still, that challenge of learning to read music and going through that, it's good for the soul and the mind.
It absolutely is. I mean, if you look at all cultures around the world, that's one thing that we all have. Yeah. Music. Yeah. And some sort of spiritual practice. Yeah. So wherever that fits in, whether it's religion, whether it's just some sort of connection with the world around you. But I think that is something that I do as well, as I'm not a religious person. I was back in the day, and I've had my issues with religion, but I think religion's so beautiful now. And I've learned to really take a step back and look at that. And religion and spirituality and your connection with whatever it is that connects us all. This thing that's just super intelligent in the world that is exuded in all things. It's just beautiful to see.
Yeah, I like to say to people, man has created, or humans have created hundreds of religions, so why not create your own? We've been doing it forever.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. So
why not sit down and create something that works for you, that fits into your life?
And that's my view on it. Really, is nobody's gotten it right.
Yeah,
that's pretty selfish to think that everybody else around the world, they're all wrong, but I picked the right one. Like that's kind of silly in my head. But if we look across all religions and all cultures, and we see what are the common denominators here, that's probably where the truth lies somewhere.
Yeah. And right? it's the practice, it's the community, it's the ritual. Exactly all of those things help us. Like I like the way the way it's taught, like from the First Nations, where they looked at everything as medicine. Like the stories were medicine, the dancing was medicine. That connection and that sacrifice to the trees and the animals and everything. That was a way of showing gratitude and connection and respect. Yeah. And, taking those ideas and those concepts and applying it to your life and making it fit you, it's beautiful. And, it doesn't have to be like I'm an atheist, but at the same time, I recognize that we need something like that.
Oh, yeah. That's kind of similar to where I'm at. Like, you understand, like, how important a sense of community is.
Yeah.
Because really, when it all comes down to it, we all just want to be loved, right? And that's something that's so beautiful about religion. That's why I like it for a lot of people, is that it gives them community. I'm really lucky that I found community in other places. Yeah. I don't feel like I need to be part of a church to feel that. Whereas for some people, that's their only community that they have. And that's where they feel love. That's where they feel connected. And that's beautiful. And I think we should encourage that. Yeah. But not to have the mindset that, I'm right, you're wrong. And you have to do what I do. And you can't have your own thought process. Yeah. That part I don't agree with, but I think it is something that is beautiful. So, I think that's having some sort of spiritual practice, whether it's, for me, like, I don't go to church. I don't really have I don't talk to a higher power or anything like that. But for me, I hike a lot. I go out to the mountains a lot. And that's a spiritual practice for me, to climb to the top of a mountain and just sit and look at the vastness of the world. And then thinking about how that is nothing when you compare that to the universe around us. We are just infinitesimally small. And getting that perspective from the top of a mountain is beautiful, and that really gives me perspective into my life as well. So doing stuff like that movement is, I guess, kind of the next step of things that I do. Because I don't think there's just one thing. You don't just do one thing for your mental health. It's every day, and it's all day. So movement, some sort of physical exercise every day. Whether that's going out for a walk, listen to a podcast, which I do quite a lot, or going to the gym, going for a hike, doing some gentle stretching, doing some gentle movement. Something every day is something that I incorporate into my life. And I notice that if I miss that, then I start to notice changes in my body and in my mental health. And then kind of the last thing I think, and I think Mackenzie talked about this, is on her episode, was what you put into your body. Yeah. There are 100 trillion bacterial cells living within us. That's 10 times more cells than there are human cells. Yeah. So we are 90% bacteria. Yeah. So if you think about that, the bacterial cells are a lot smaller. So, we only have 2 to 10 pounds worth of bacteria that we're all carrying around every day, which that's also a lot of bacteria. Yeah. 10 pounds worth of bacteria. It's amazing. But, they outnumber our cells 10 to 1. So, and they are how we interact with the world around us and how we protect ourselves against the world around us. So to me, part of my mental health and my understanding of neuroscience and the gut-brain axis and how that all works, making sure that my gut is functioning well, that I'm eating good food, that I'm feeding the 100 trillion bacteria, that I'm feeding them well. They're my little super army that's fighting the world around me. So I need to make sure that I'm feeding those little guys. So eating good food. Yeah. And I notice that if I'm having crappy food, my mental health suffers.
There's so much into that, because if you eat the wrong foods, it feeds the wrong bacteria, and those bacteria have an effect on your emotions.
Absolutely.
and how you perceive the world.
Absolutely.
So when we fill it full of sugar or other things, the wrong bacteria, the imbalance shifts, and it changes our mood and our mental health.
It really does.
And that's something we could go into forever.
Oh yeah, and it truly is the next thing in medicine is individualized health through your gut.
Yeah,
healing the body through the gut. And I think people are already talking about it, but if we can all just do a couple little things every day just to make sure that our gut is working well, or that we're just at least giving it more than we were before, you'll notice changes in how you're thinking.
Yeah.
It's just fantastic.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's just, all of those tools and techniques are beautiful. Lots there. And again, one thing we're learning continually through these podcasts are as we interview different people, it's, everyone's got their own little path and there's different tools and how they pull it together. And I think, unfortunately with the way things are online and in books and everything, everyone thinks, I have to find that perfect path. There's this book or there's this answer. Yeah. But no, you have to find what works for you. And that's what makes it long lasting and makes it work for you.
It's just like
sit down and practice and test and keep what works and get rid of what doesn't.
And it's the same thing as a diet, like one diet works well for somebody. I mean, I hate the word diet because this should be a lifestyle because you often don't stick with that. So it's the same thing with mental health. It's not about finding what worked for somebody else and then trying to apply it to your life because that's not going to work because you're different. You're not the same person as them. Yeah. You can learn from them and say, hey, let's try this and see if I find that it works for me too. But really just learning, checking with yourself and saying, like, does this serve me? Does this fill me up? Fill my cup as a thing that I'm doing? Yes or no? No, I don't need it. I don't need that in my life. Let's try something else and kind of go from there.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. Thank you. Let's end with that. I've already kept you longer than I promised.
I didn't even look at the time. My goodness. Thanks for listening.
Yeah.
If you made it to the end, I mean.
Well, it's not as long as Michelle Traxel was.
I loved her episode. It was fantastic.
She's very passionate.
She is. I love her so much. I just love her. Oh.
Well, thank you everyone for listening. Thank you. Daxon, you're a beautiful soul, an amazing young man, and you are going to be a very valuable member of our community. We're grateful for you here, and we hope you're here for a long time. I know when I came to Okotoks 13 and a half years ago, or whatever it was, I was excited to be here, and I wasn't sure how long, but I'm glad I'm here, and it's all worked out beautifully, and we need you here, so thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been awesome. I really appreciate it.
If you want to learn more about Dr. Daxon, I will have his information in our description. He's at Thrive Chiropractic, and he's a great resource and great chiropractor. We're very grateful to have him here in our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, have a lovely evening. Take care of yourself. And, if anything, the thing that keeps coming up through all of these is the root to your mental health is loving and accepting yourself.
Amen.
And from there, everything else comes along. So let's focus on that, because if we can love ourselves, it can protect us in those times when we don't have our community, when those around us aren't loving and accepting us. But that's the next step.
Oh,
excellent.
I love that.
Thank you so much, everyone. Love you all. Have a great night.
Bye.
Bye. All right. Well, wasn't that an amazing interview with Daxon? I had so much fun. He is just a really beautiful and unique individual, and I love his energy and his, authenticity. He is definitely someone who, is open and sharing, vulnerable, but yet at the same time, he is, a hard worker and a passionate person about helping others and, really making a difference here in this community. And we're grateful to have him. Like he mentioned, he's new here to Okotoks. He's been practicing since July 1st, so he's only been at it for a few months here, and he's already building himself a nice practice. My half-daughter goes and sees him and really enjoys him, and I'm excited to go and see him for a visit as well. When we particularly talk on this subject of acceptance and self-acceptance and finding out who we are and having the courage to follow that path. Yes, it is important that our community as a whole accepts us and embraces us with open arms without judging. And that's what I hope Okotoks can be. It can be that bastion in this, of Alberta for those that accept. We are a, community in the foothills. We are a community in a small, outside of this big urban center of Calgary. And some of these smaller towns in Alberta don't have a great reputation for being open and accepting and supporting of people who are gay and of color and who are trans. And we need to be that example. So those who are listening, please, reach out and get to know those people. And if you don't know anyone yet, then when someone says something that is judgmental and hurtful and harmful, please stand up for them. Say something. Show love and compassion for those that are desperately trying to be their true selves. If you think about the thing that you love most, like if you are a diehard Christian and it is the most important thing to you in your life, your faith and, following Jesus. And if someone came along and said, I'm sorry, that's not acceptable, we don't like it, we don't agree with it, you have to pretend to be something else. You have to hide that. If someone came along and, all of a sudden decided, no, you can't be a man anymore, you have to pretend to be a woman, that would drive you nuts. And we have to take the time to place ourselves in their shoes and their experiences and realize how damaging and harmful and hurtful it is to place someone in an identity that is not their own. And we can be the change, we can be that support and love in our community to help these people find who they are and feel comfortable with who they are. One of the things that I share a lot in the course is how, one, we need to let go of two things in our lives that are harmful and hurtful to all of us. And that is competition and judgment. And when we try to compare ourselves to others or make ourselves better than others, we are, in a sense, separating ourselves from other people. And when we decide that what they believe isn't as good as what we believe, or that our facts are different, or that somehow they are less than us because of who they are and what they do, that doesn't make our communities better. That doesn't make you better. It doesn't make them worse. It just harms everyone. And we need to let go of this need to judge and compete, and we need to embrace and support one another. Now, that doesn't mean we can't be a better community and we can't compete with ourselves and become the best of who we are and embrace all the talents and abilities and strengths we have to become the best we can be. That doesn't mean we can't do that. But focusing on that rather than, hoping that someone else fails so I win, that doesn't make the community as a whole better. It doesn't make our world better. We need to focus on making ourselves better and more supportive and caring so everyone gets raised up. So again, those are the two things I talk about in the course we need to let go of. The two things we need to embrace are expressing gratitude and service. And Daxon talked about a lot of that, continually expressing gratitude daily for what he has and where he's able to be now in his life and to be really authentic and not only be who he is, but to follow his dreams. And as he's serving not only through his work, but through his community, afterwards we had a good talk about the things he wants to do for the LGBTQ community and for our community in general. And when we can find those ways to lift up others, we can do so much more good. And I implore all of us to follow that path, to follow your Tao and to find ways to serve others and to express gratitude for the abundance we have. This is really a beautiful world. And despite what the media tries to tell us and the challenges that we're dealing through, we are still in such a better place than we have ever been on this planet. And yes, we have to make great changes to keep it beautiful and to protect the climate and everyone. But we need to have hope in order to do that. And when we just look at the world as this dangerous, scary place that has no hope, then either we'll do nothing or we'll sit around and wait for someone to come along and fix it. And whether that's some other human or a God, our role is to do what we can to make a difference today. And I ask you that question now. What can you do? What can you do today and tomorrow to make your community a better place? Thank you for listening. And again, thank you, Daxon, for coming in and spending this time with us. I had a great time. And I look forward to other times where maybe him and I can sit down and further discuss things. If you want to learn more about my course and about the 5 elements of letting go, you can go to jaredmccallum.com or follow the links in the description below. And one thing that we put out to all our Healing Elements family just yesterday and today is I'm going to start recording some high-quality guided meditations and putting them out there for people to listen to. So if you have any requests, send us a message at through jaredmccallum.com or through healingelements.ca. And again, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, we invite you to subscribe through your provider, whether that's Apple or Spotify or Google Music or whatever it is. And if you don't mind taking the time to rate it, that just helps putting it out there so we can reach more people and help more people. And we really appreciate it because we know that with feedback we're getting is this is helping and we want to help more people. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care of yourselves. Love yourself first and everything will follow. Thank you.